Whether it be the versatile horse, the terrifying war elephant, or the lesser-known tar-covered flaming pig, animals have been an integral part of human warfare for thousands of years. But as the world moved into the 20th century, the roles most animals played in conflict were gradually replaced by mechanization. But despite these technological advancements, during wartime, some men couldn't help but turn back to nature when trying to solve some unique or difficult challenges. In this video, we'll look at 6 times during the 20th century that humans tried to turn animals into weapons, with varying levels of success. Because let's face it, not every idea is going to be as great as the flaming war pig. While it dwarfed all previous wars with its scale of destruction, World War II was still very much an analog conflict, and getting bombs on target successfully usually meant getting as close as possible. Understandably, that was something the enemy did their best to discourage. A gliding bomb was proposed as a new delivery method that would keep air crews out of harm's way, but as of 1943, a reliable guidance system had yet to be developed. This meant they were open to exploring almost any suggestion, including experimental psychologist B.F. Skinner's unique proposal of pigeons. Now, homing pigeons were still in regular use by the military at this time. Though an animal with a tendency to return home might at first seem like a poor choice to put in control of high explosives, Skinner knew pigeons had way more to offer than just their homing abilities. A pioneer in reinforcement learning, B.F. Skinner had found pigeons easy to train in multiple tasks due to their long lives, color vision, and intelligence. By way of positive reinforcement, Skinner and his team trained pigeons to peck at potential target images as they would appear from the vantage point of a glide bomb. Results were overly positive, with the pigeons even being able to learn to target specific intersections on city maps. A signal transmission system was developed to detect the location of the pecking on the screen and adjust pneumatic signals to the bomb's control surfaces in order to guide its flight. While simulator testing continued to prove the concept as reliable, Skinner said that he soon realized that a pigeon was more easily controlled than a physical scientist serving on a committee. His response to this challenge? Add more pigeons. 3 pigeons, each with their own screen, would now be able to work together in a 2 out of 3 redundancy system that would account for pauses in input or pigeons being distracted by other targets. Skinner was confident this reliable majority vote system would finally convince the government the pigeon bomb was viable. In early 1944, the Project Pigeon team was invited to present one more time for a committee of the country's top scientists. In the demonstration, the pigeon once again guided the simulated bomb to its target perfectly. But according to Skinner, the spectacle of a living pigeon carrying out its assignment, no matter how beautifully, simply reminded the committee of how utterly fantastic the proposal was. Subsequently, the project was cancelled in order to focus on others that had more immediate combat applications. Interestingly, pigeons had a short comeback during the late 1970s, though in a more peaceful role, working for the US Coast Guard. Even in calm weather, spotting the orange speck of a life vest or even a raft from the air is a very difficult task. Project Sea Hunt involved the training of pigeons to react to orange stimuli, and once again, the birds proved themselves to be more than up to the task. In a competition between pigeons and humans, the birds spotted the target 90% of the time on the helicopter's first pass, while the human success rate was only 38%. The Sea Hunt system used 3 pigeons to cover a full 360-degree spectrum. Air crews were alerted by a light when one of the birds started pecking, indicating the direction they needed to look. Despite the success of the experiments, the program was cut in 1980 as new aircraft and infrared technology was introduced to perform these tasks instead. While missile-guiding pigeons would have had to sacrifice their lives at the conclusion of each deployment, our next animal combatant was dead before their mission even began. This is the story of the British plan to use explosive rats to disrupt German industry. The concept was fairly simple. By way of a harmless-looking vessel, aka a dead rat, the enemy could be deceived into detonating an explosive on themselves. And the idea wasn't even new. Explosive shells covered in beeswax and coal dust were used during the American Civil War. These coal torpedoes, as they were called, were planted in coal shipments with the hope that they would be shoveled into boilers of steam-powered ships or trains. The Special Operations Executive version involved sewing a rat's skin around plastic explosives with a detonator and short fuse. The plan was to have operatives behind enemy lines leave the rats around coal storage areas in Nazi-occupied factories with the belief that they would likely be tossed in the firebox of the boilers that powered those facilities. While the explosive rat by itself wouldn't cause much damage, the chain reaction in a pressurized boiler system can be catastrophic. The plan ran afoul when the first bunch of rats were dropped into France and intercepted by the German army. One can imagine the confusion of the Germans after opening a crate only to find it filled with dozens of dead rats. Once the true purpose of the rodents was determined, it prompted a hunt for hundreds of rats the enemy now believed were distributed across the continent. And in the end, the SOE concluded the trouble this caused them was a much greater success to us than if the rats had actually been used. Our next entry is our smallest, but probably the most powerful and effective. And yes, I know a flea isn't an animal, but close enough. Besides, it involves an actual animal too, so just stay with me. When Japan's infamous Biological and Chemical Warfare Research Division, Unit 731, was experimenting to find the best ways to spread bubonic plague, they found the answer to be fleas. But not just fleas by themselves. No, the fleas had to actually team up with an animal partner that didn't have to be trained or even know it was part of the process. The Uji bomb was specifically designed to deliver fleas effectively. Made of ceramic, it only required a small explosive charge to burst open, thus protecting the fragile cargo. Among the 30,000 fleas in each bomb was a key component: corn. The corn is what gave the fleas mobility, as it attracted rodents in the area, which in turn spread the fleas and plague to human hosts and food supplies. You know, I usually try and lighten up my history content with some jokes or sarcasm, but I have to admit, I got nothing, guys. This one's pretty bleak. The Japanese dropped many of these plague bombs around Chinese communities during the late 30s, and that, combined with other chemical and biological weapon attacks, cost the lives of anywhere from 100 to 400,000 civilians. When the tide turned in the Pacific during 1944, there were several attempts to deploy plague bombs against US forces, but fortunately, none were successful. Which brings us to the most ambitious flea delivery plan of the war: Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night. This last-ditch effort to strike American soil involved the use of the Imperial Fleet's new I-400 class submarine. These 400-foot vessels had a unique feature. On the top deck was a cylindrical, watertight aircraft hangar that could hold 3 airplanes. These underwater aircraft carriers were to sail across the Pacific and launch their planes off the coast of California. The kamikaze pilots would then drop their flea-filled plague bombs over the cities of San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco before crashing their planes. Optimistic estimates put the potential casualties in the tens of thousands. Fortunately though, Japan's surrender in August 1945 ended the war before the plague attack could be put into action. Picture this: you're a 60-year-old dental surgeon in 1942 and think you have a good idea for a weapon to use against the Japanese. What are the chances your letter gets to the president's desk? Well, if you're already friends with the First Lady, the chances are pretty good. And if Roosevelt reads your wild proposal and sees fit to write the words, "This man is not a nut," well, congratulations, you just won $40 million in government funding to try and turn bats into explosives. Even though Dr. Adams' letter included wild claims like bats were placed on Earth by God for this purpose, the rest of his reasoning actually had merit. Bats were numerous, can carry more than double their own weight, and predictably like to hide in roofs and buildings. If you could attach an incendiary charge to a bat and deploy them over a target, it could be the perfect method to take down the allegedly wood and paper Japanese cities. Over the next 2 years, the bat bomb concept was refined and tested. The delivery system was a 5-foot sheet metal tube that held 1,000 hibernating bats on 26 round trays. The canister would be dropped from an airplane and then deploy a parachute at 1,000 feet. When the bats warmed up, they would take off and spread themselves out over a target area, taking refuge in any building they found, at which point the time-delayed incendiaries would cause multiple fires to start all at once. The concept was proven viable. A trial run at Utah's Dugway Proving Grounds against a mock-up of a Japanese village went well, while the escape of a few explosive-laden bats at the Carlsbad Army Airfield also proved that they were very effective at starting fires, even in small numbers. The project was cancelled when it was determined that it wouldn't be ready until at least mid-1945, though Dr. Adams maintains that in his opinion, the bat bomb system would have been more destructive than the atomic bombs, but with a smaller loss of life. When the Soviets started training anti-tank dogs in the mid-1930s, the original plan was one that did not sacrifice the dog in the process. Using its teeth to pull on a special lever, the dog was supposed to be able to release the TNT satchel at the desired location and return safely before the time-delayed fuse went off. But after months of training, this was proven to be too complicated for the dogs to perform, with them often getting confused and running back to their handlers with the bombs still attached. So they simplified the process and made the anti-tank dog a one-time use device. Training consisted of releasing hungry dogs and placing food under tanks. Once the tank-food relationship was established, the dogs were considered ready for deployment. A wooden lever extended out the back of the new explosive backpacks. When the dog ran under a tank, the lever would strike the bottom of it and detonate the charge. When the first batch of dogs were deployed against German tanks in 1941, it was pretty much a disaster. To cut costs, training had been done on stationary tanks, and the live mobile battlefield both scared and confused the animals. Some ran alongside the tanks waiting for them to stop, only to get shot in the process. Some returned back to their handlers, which were then required to shoot the animals before they blew up their own troops. Of the 30 dogs involved, only 4 managed to detonate their bombs near German forces. In addition, morale around the whole program was very low, as sending their dogs out to die and often having to shoot them themselves did not sit well with trainers or infantry. The actual results of the anti-tank dog in World War II is unclear. Soviet sources claim 300 German tanks were damaged, but more reliable stats point to a number closer to 50. Regardless, by the end of 1942, the anti-tank dog was mostly abandoned, as training schools focused on producing mine-seeking and delivery dogs instead. While not used as weapons, dolphins have special roles in several navies around the world. The US started exploring marine mammal applications in the 1960s and sent 5 dolphins to Cam Ranh Bay during the Vietnam War. They were used to perform underwater surveillance and guard warships from enemy swimmers, and it was during this time that rumors first started about the dolphins being trained to kill, though the Navy has denied these claims. Since Vietnam, one of the main roles of Navy dolphins is mine detection. Using their echolocation capabilities, they can seek out underwater mines and then mark them with buoys. In this capacity, dolphins have been deployed to keep shipping lanes safe in locations all over the world. While there have been many predictions of underwater drones replacing the marine mammal program over the years, it has yet to happen. And dolphins currently provide underwater protection to roughly 25% of the United States nuclear arsenal. That brings an end to my list of animals we tried to turn into weapons. If you enjoyed this presentation, I invite you to hit that subscribe button and check out this video exploring 7 times humans tried to blow up their problems. This has been another episode of That Happened. My name is Sledge. Thanks for watching.